Well, this feels familiar. Talking about the England national team coming straight off the back of another European Championship final loss is a tricky situation. As Southgate's tenure rolled on, all discussion around England became slowly but surely incredibly partisan. Southgate in or Southgate out. By the end of his time, the fan base had fully split into two separate movements. Those who love the manager, everything he represents, everything he has done, and everything they want him to be. And those who hate the manager for everything he represents, everything he has done, and everything that he could never be. Reception upon the announcement that Euro 2024 would be Southgate's last time as England manager was predictably mixed. For all the social media posts celebrating his departure, there was an outpouring of love and appreciation in equal measure. And because of this, I'm going to do something that I don't usually do on this channel, and that's give a prerequisite to the statement that I'm about to make. I like Gareth Southgate, and I think he's done some excellent work with the national side. I have a whole hour-long video on the intricacies of his time with England up until the end of World Cup 2022 if you'd like to hear about it. I travelled to Germany for Euro 2024 and was at every England game apart from the final, as I'm a huge England fan. The tournament ended with England reaching another major final, an achievement in itself, and provided some amazing moments and some unforgettable memories. England have come a long way since the humiliation in Nice in 2016, and Southgate deserves credit for it. No one wanted Southgate to succeed with England more than me. And with all that out of the way, it's time to take off my England fan hat and put on my analytical one and get to the point this video will focus on, even if it pains me somewhat to say it. England were terrible at Euro 2024 and needlessly wasted a massive opportunity. Yes, England just about navigated their way through the tournament and reached the final, but they did so through some unbelievable acts of inspiration from some of the best players in the world. Throughout the entire tournament, it's honestly hard to think of any sustained period where England excelled at doing anything cohesively as a team. England struggled to press and win the ball high up the pitch. England struggled playing out against a high press. England struggled to create good chances against settled defences who dug in. England struggled to create good chances after long periods of sustained possession. England struggled to create good chances on the counter. England struggled to create good chances from short build-up using their creative players. England struggled to create good chances from direct play and going long in the build-up. Apart from one incredibly scrappy second phase flick on against Slovakia, England struggled to create good chances from set pieces. The other end of the pitch was no better. England kept clean sheets in only 2 of their 7 games, conceding to Denmark, Slovakia, Switzerland, the Netherlands and Spain. England were awful in literally every aspect of the game you can possibly think of, and all the statistics back it up. Per 90 minutes, England averaged an expected goals value of 0.69 from chances created in open play. Out of the 24 teams in the tournament, England were ranked 22nd in open play chance creation, with only Romania and Scotland below them. This statistic is so absurd that there's a necessity to repeat it. Out of all the teams at Euro 2024, an England team featuring Kane, Saka, Foden, Bellingham, Palmer, Eze, Bowen, Gordon, Watkins, Tony, Trippier, Trent Alexander-Arnold produced the 3rd worst chance creation in the entire tournament. An accomplishment so incredibly bad that I think it would be hard to replicate even if you were intentionally trying to do so. But football is not only about attacking, but about how you defend as well. In fact, Southgate's England teams have never been the most prolific chance creators, but have always gone deep in tournaments by being defensively solid and keeping clean sheets. So, were England any good at defending at Euro 2024? Also no. While having the 22nd best attack, England's defence was only the 9th best in the tournament at restricting their opponents from creating chances in open play, with the likes of Ukraine, Switzerland, Serbia, Belgium, Germany, Spain, France and Portugal all boasting better defences. A damning stat in and of itself, exuberated when you remember that half of those ended up on the side of the tournament bracket with all the top teams. There are just so many statistics that highlight England's horrendous performances that it becomes borderline comical. Here is a graph of England games at Euro 2024. The green bars representing the quality of chances England created from open play, and the red bars indicating the quality of chances they let their opponents create. England won the non-penalty XG battle against Serbia and Slovenia, we'll call it a draw with Denmark, and then lost all 4 knockout round games. Look, I accept that there is more to football than XG numbers on FB Ref, and even if you hate statistics or whatever, on this occasion, the eye test wouldn't fail you either. Apart from maybe the first 45 minutes against Serbia and maybe the first 45 minutes against the Netherlands, did England ever look good? Did they ever look like reliably creating good chances or preventing the opponent from creating any themselves? There might be some of you out there right now who have already scrolled down and are frantically posting in the comments about how none of this matters because England made the final and they got through games and therefore they were actually good, But ask yourself the question: did England get through this tournament with a cohesive game plan that provided consistent chance creation, or did they get through this tournament through divine acts of brilliance from their world-class individuals? Think about every goal England scored in the knockout rounds at Euro 2024. The first goal is one of the most amazing feats of brilliance the national team has ever seen, as Jude Bellingham overhead kicks the ball into the back of the net following a desperation throw-in and flick-on. Kane then scores a second in injury time after Eze miskicks a shot from the second phase of a set piece and Tony does some magic to flick it on. These were the only 2 shots on target England had across 120 minutes versus Slovakia, by the way. Against Switzerland, Saka smashes the ball in from a ridiculous angle from outside the box. Against the Netherlands, we have a dodgy penalty that Kane dispatches, and then Watkins smashes the ball in from a ridiculous angle while the keeper is set and through the defender's legs. And in the final, Palmer smashes the ball in with an absolutely ridiculous strike. Simply put, in lieu of any sort of consistent chance creation, England's world-class attacking talent fed off scraps and pulled England through the tournament through sheer finishing ability and a bit of luck. This might just be acceptable if England were rock solid in defence and one amazing strike from one of their amazing forwards would be enough to win any game, but they weren't. England kept only 2 clean sheets and rode their luck at the back time and time again. How on earth Slovakia didn't score an equaliser after Kane's goal in extra time is beyond me, as their forwards consistently skied gilt-edged chances in England's 6-yard box. England at international tournaments are often labelled as defensive, boring or cautious, but this time around England as a collective were not that. They were simply woeful in all aspects of the game. And the perplexing thing is that, despite what everyone seems to think, they weren't always like this under Gareth Southgate. In past tournaments, we've seen England smash 6 past Iran, 3 past Wales, 3 past AFCON champions Senegal. We've seen them dispatch Ukraine by putting 4 past them, 2 past Denmark and 2 past Germany. Even in games where England weren't scoring freely, they were controlling games and were excellent at preventing opposition teams from creating chances. They may have only beaten the likes of the Czech Republic and Croatia 1-0, but those teams barely even had a sniff of England's goal. At Euro 2020, England were ranked 9th best for XG per 90, but could boast the best defence in the tournament for expected goals against. Pickford ended that tournament with 5 clean sheets and the Golden Glove, as England went through all 7 games without conceding a single goal from open play. England bettered their opponent's XG in every single game outside of the final. At World Cup 2022, England had the 5th best XG per 90 minutes out of 32 teams and were also ranked 5th best for expected goals against per 92. England bettered their opponent's XG in every single game that they played. England were completely deserving of reaching the final of Euro 2020 and were deserving of going even further than they did at World Cup 2022, and only didn't so because our record goal scorer skied a penalty over the crossbar in the most England way possible. By no means am I trying to say that, like, under Gareth Southgate, England were 1970s Brazil or by far the best international team to walk the face of the earth, but they were a hell of a lot better than what they cooked up at Euro 2024, where the team went backwards. And the question is, what caused this inexplicable and sudden downturn in performances? And to answer that, we need to talk about Alejandro Grimaldo. After 197 appearances for Benfica, Grimaldo joined Bayer Leverkusen in the summer of 2023, a busy summer window that featured the likes of Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, Moises Caicedo and Harry Kane all moving clubs for transfer fees of upwards of 100 million euros, a decent left-back switching from Benfica to a Leverkusen side that had finished in 6th place in the Bundesliga the previous season made absolutely zero headlines. And what happened next was history. Leverkusen went on to have one of the best club seasons of all time, going unbeaten in the Bundesliga and dethroning Bayern Munich after 11 titles in a row. Alejandro Grimaldo can now lay claim to having one of the greatest seasons a fullback has ever had, as he became a cornerstone of Leverkusen's dominance and racked up 32 goal contributions as a left-sided defender. Grimaldo spent the season predominantly playing as a left wing-back as part of a Leverkusen back 5, and his inverted runs into central areas constantly caused problems for opposition teams, as he frequently popped up in the box and in goal-scoring positions. Here is a great example from Leverkusen's 3-0 dismantling of Bayern Munich. Leverkusen hit Bayern on the counter-attack and Grimaldo receives wide on the left. Grimaldo advances centrally as Leverkusen's outside centre-back overlaps him to take away a defender. Grimaldo pops the ball off to the left-sided number 10, Nathan Tella, and bursts into the penalty box. He receives the 1-2 and smartly finishes past Neuer to put Leverkusen 2-0 up. Grimaldo did this sort of thing time and time again last season, ending the season as one of the best and most prolific fullbacks in the world. His form had come at the perfect time for the Spanish national team. Lacking in left-footed, left-sided defensive options, Spain only really had a middling Cucurella struggling for minutes in a poor Chelsea side that could play in that position. But now Spain had a truly world-class option. Just before the start of the tournament, Spain manager Luis de la Fuente even said so himself. Quote, "The season Alejandro has had, phenomenal. Phenomenal. We owe it as a nation to get the most out of a talent like his. I expect him to start every game at Euro 2024. It was then no surprise to anyone that Grimaldo would go on to replicate his club form for his national team. As promised by De La Fuente, Grimaldo started every game for Spain at Euro 2024 and would go on to be voted into the team of the tournament at left back, undisputably being one of the best players in the tournament and cementing himself as one of the best fullbacks in world football. Except, no, that's not what happened. I'm lying. I've been lying this whole time. I just made up that quote from De La Fuente. He never even said that. Look, here's a sped up compilation of me awkwardly photoshopping the screenshot. I'm a compulsive liar. I can't stop. I made it up. It didn't happen. Excluding a dead rubber against Albania, where Spain played their B team as they had already confirmed first place in Group B after winning their first two matches, Grimaldo played a grand total of 24 minutes across the entire tournament. Cucurella, the very same Cucurella who struggled for minutes and consistent performances at a 6th placed Chelsea side, was Spain's first choice left back and went on to be one of the best and most influential players across the entire tournament. And that's because De La Fuente understood his squad and his players perfectly. Grimaldo was a perfect fit for Leverkusen, but he was not a perfect fit for Spain. Grimaldo had played wide left in a back five all season, while Spain would be playing with a back four. Grimaldo would invert inside and drive centrally, while an outside centre-back overlapped him to take away defenders, something that he wouldn't be afforded with for Spain. Leverkusen played with two floating number 10s behind a striker, leaving the entire left side of the pitch available for Grimaldo. Spain would be playing with two traditional out-and-out wingers in Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal. Grimaldo is a better player than Cucurella. Grimaldo was in better form than Cucurella. Grimaldo plays for a better team than Cucurella. But most importantly, Cucurella was a better fit for Spain. While infinitely less expansive, exciting and quite frankly interesting, Cucurella offered a type of profile that complemented his teammates well. Cucurella had played in a back four with Chelsea. He's happy to hold width and stick closer to the touchline, and he's selfless enough to overlap Williams and stay away from the left half space that Williams likes to drive into. Cucurella's synergy with his backline and his winger allowed both to thrive. Nico Williams was afforded the entire left flank, free of defensive responsibilities and unrestricted by his corresponding fullback, who stayed out of his way. In the final against England, Nico Williams opened the scoring and Cucurella provided the title-winning assist. And with my point now well and truly laboured, it's time to talk about Phil Foden. If you've gotten this far in the video, I think it's safe to assume that you know who Phil Foden is, so let's speed run the introduction. Premier League Player of the Year, 27 goals, 12 assists, treble winner, Premier League champion, Manchester City Golden Boy, a world-class talent. But if you watched any of his performances at Euro 2024, then there's no way you'd know that. To get Foden into a team already stacked with attacking talent, Southgate decided to crowbar him in and start him on the left wing in England's opening game against Serbia. There was a lot of talk before the tournament about where Foden would play, if Foden would play, and Southgate in press conferences tried to make the point that formations are more than just names arranged on a sheet of paper, and it's not about where players start on the pitch, but the areas they defend and the areas where they receive the ball in. Look, whatever the plan was, it didn't work. Foden had a disastrous tournament, and despite starting every single game for England, ended the tournament without a single goal contribution. Okay, look, I've chosen Foden to highlight my point here, but in all honesty, I could have picked any one of England's forwards. Not a single one showed any sign of consistency, comfort, or understanding of their role in the team, and that's because not a single one was deployed in the role that they play at club level. Foden was shunted out on the left wing. Bellingham was deployed as a number 10, but had to share space with Kane and had no runners on the wings like he has with Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr. Kane had about 3 players at any one time clogging up areas he made a career of dropping into, and when he did pick up the ball, he had no pace around him for him to find. Saka's role probably suited his club form the most, hence why he ended up looking the best out of all of England's forwards. But even he had to receive the ball with a defender on his back. Far more often than he's tasked with at Arsenal, he received minimal overlapping Ben White style runs from right back, and every time he did cut inside, he ran straight into Bellingham, Foden and Kane, who all spent the entire tournament running into each other on the edge of opposition penalty boxes. When you break it down, it gets so silly that I'm not sure whether to laugh or to cry. Let's put it another way. In the opening game against Serbia, England had a right winger on the left wing, a false 9 with no one to run beyond him, a right winger with no overlapping fullback, a right back in central midfield, and a right back at left back. What? What are we doing? The whole system was an unbalanced mess. If only someone could have seen this coming before the tournament. I hate to say, I told you so. In that very video, I say it does feel like there is an element of throwing all the good players onto the pitch and just hoping that they work it out. But unfortunately, they couldn't. I have never seen a team where every player spent so much time pointing. Seriously, go back and watch any England match from the tournament and just watch the amount of times the players wave their arms, point at who should be marking who, point at who should be running where, point at where they want the ball. Every break in play was met with the camera cutting to one England player running over to speak to another, mouths covered as they frantically tried to work out what was going on. England would sometimes press from opposition goal kicks, but sometimes they just wouldn't. Sometimes they would press zonally, but sometimes they would press man to man. Sometimes Kane would charge down the goalkeeper, sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes England would play out short from the back. Sometimes they would play it around the back and then Stones would just kick it long. Sometimes they would play it around the back just for the ball to go back for Pickford, who would then smash one 80 yards up the pitch. Even Kane, the consummate professional himself, came out after the Denmark game and said that the team had no fucking idea how they were supposed to be pressing. Okay, he didn't say it in those exact words. As mentioned, he's a consummate professional, but that's basically the translation of this quote. All right, let's take a breather and let's do a quick quiz. In England's opening match against Serbia, Foden, Kane, Saka, Bellingham, Rice and Trent Alexander-Arnold all lined up as England's front six. How many times had this front six played together for England before this tournament? Have a think, get your answer ready. Drum roll please. Not once. 0 times. I looked back through about 3 years of England lineups and I couldn't find one example where this front six had all started a game together. I couldn't even find an example where all 6 were on the same pitch together during any stage of a match for England. Things aren't any better when Trent Alexander-Arnold was dropped for Kobbie Mainoo halfway through the tournament, Mainoo himself only having 3 England caps before the start of Euro 2024. England's setup was an unbalanced mess of players who looked like they had no relationships with each other and had never played with each other before, because that's exactly what it was. In a tale as old as time, it seems like Gareth Southgate eventually fell into the same trap every single England manager falls into. By this point, you have to conclude that it must be in our DNA, it must be in the water that we drink. On the eve of the tournament, Southgate became blinded by England's wealth of attacking options and dismantled everything synonymous with his previous England sides to unceremoniously shoehorn them all in. It's mind-numbing that we look back on teams from the golden generation and, with the benefit of hindsight, we all laugh at the sight of Paul Scholes on the left wing. 20 years later, we're at it again. Maybe in part to simply having less elite attacking players at his disposal, Luis de la Fuente avoided the same trappings. Spain prioritised profiles over club-level performances, and the front three of Nico Williams, Morata and Lamine Yamal synergised brilliantly and efficiently to become the most potent attack across the whole tournament. Spain's strategy was nothing complicated. Make no mistake, there was no 4D galaxy-brained play here which broke football wide open and propelled a once unfavoured team into tournament winners. Left and right fullbacks who were on their natural sides and bombed up and down holding width. A defensive midfielder screening the back four with an energetic number 8 covering every blade of grass on one side of him, and a more creative number 8 with license to roam and attack the box on the other. A false 9 surrounded by pace, with one ball to feet style winger who could create from a standing start, and another who excels in direct running and stretching defences by attacking space in behind. As I watched Morata drop into the half space, pulling away Stones or Gahey, freeing up Yamal to go one-on-one against Shaw, while Nico Williams bombed in behind Walker, it struck me. Hold on just a second. Didn't we used to do this kind of thing? Kane playing the part of Morata, dropping into the half spaces and dragging defenders around. Saka playing the part of Yamal, receiving the ball to feet and going 1v1 against a fullback from a standing start. And Marcus Rashford often playing the part of Nico Williams, a speedy winger who attacks space in behind and shoots at goal. England literally used to do this and were good at it. Why was this thrown away? Don't believe me? Let's look at 3 of the most important games since the end of the 2022 World Cup. And by my estimation, that's Italy at home and away, crucial qualifying matches against a top side, and Scotland away under a ferocious Hampden Park atmosphere. England won all 3 of these matches. Sometimes the personnel would change, as you would expect with a talent pool as deep as England's, but we can see complementary player profiles throughout all of them. Italy won, England 2. Kane, false 9, Saka, the creative winger, and Grealish tasked with hitting the space in behind. Rice screens the back 4, Phillips runs around and covers ground, Bellingham has license to roam and attack the box from deep areas. Scotland 1, England 3. Kane, false 9, Foden, the creative winger on the right this time, who had a great game and opened the scoring. Who would have thought it? Rashford tasked with hitting the space in behind. Rice screens the back 4, Phillips runs around and covers ground, and Bellingham has license to roam and attack the box from deep areas. England 3, Italy 1, rinse and repeat. Kane, false 9, Foden right, Rashford left, midfield 3 of Rice, Phillips, Bellingham. Do you see my point now? Where did this go? And why was it scrapped mere weeks before Euro 2024? England were fantastic in these games and won convincingly. This was the blueprint of how England played, and this is mostly how England had played since the end of Euro 2020. You can go back and look at any good England performance from the last 4 years, and while the faces may change, the player profiles don't. Instead of a clear methodology and strategy that had been worked on in the 2 years since World Cup 2022, England went for a completely untested and untrained approach. A simple game plan with an understandable strategy in which each player can easily understand their role in the team. No thanks. Now we've got some false left winger running over and exchanging passes on the right. We've got a right back and left back. We start with a creative long range passer in midfield, but he's ditched for an energetic presser. But then he's ditched for a volume passer who can receive under pressure. Then we switch to some quasi back three system with wing backs playing on opposite flanks to their strong foot. We play 60 minutes of every game with a 30-year-old false nine who has no runners around him, just to hook him for a striker who offers less in the build-up but will frantically run in behind. Gordon plays 2 minutes against Denmark and then is banished to the Shadow Realm, and for some reason Eze is playing mostly at left wing back. I mean, Saka played in about 3 different positions in a single game across 120 minutes against Slovakia. The list goes on. And the weird part is that ignoring fan and media clamour to fill the pitch with as many in-form attacking players as possible used to be something Gareth Southgate was actually very good at, despite all the stick he used to get for it. In the past, Southgate would relentlessly back players like Henderson, Phillips, Maguire and Rashford despite their struggles at club level, because he seemingly understood the need for the types of attributes those players could provide, and he understood that these players played well for England. The team played better with them on the pitch, and that's all that really mattered. I remember a time when James Maddison was in top form for Leicester City and there were huge calls for him to be called up for England, but Southgate resisted doing so, as playing Maddison as a number 10 would block the spaces that Kane liked to drop into, which was the fulcrum for England's attack. I'm not sure where this thinking went, because now half of the 26-man squad is made up of players that can play as a number 10. I don't know, maybe as he rolled into his 8th year on the job, the pressure from the fans and the media finally broke him. Maybe, as already mentioned, the allure of England's exciting attacking talent was just too much. Everything that came before no longer mattered, as Southgate threw everything away and became corrupted by the one ring to rule them all, which I guess is Phil Foden in this case. I like to imagine a scenario where after Foden bagged that brace against West Ham to win the title on the final day of the season, Southgate started stroking the TV. My precious. To be fair to Southgate, there are some mitigating factors that went into his decision making. Trent Alexander-Arnold was due to start in midfield for friendly matches against Brazil and Belgium in March 2024, but pulled out of the squad through injury. Bukayo Saka and Harry Kane did the same. Henderson took the Saudi money and threw away 6 months of his career. The downfall of Calvin Phillips will be studied by scientists. Maguire got injured. Luke Shaw remained injured. Rashford had a mediocre campaign. I can understand how none of these factors helped, but England's talent pool was still deep enough to cope. Once Trent Alexander-Arnold missed those March 2024 international games, any plan of playing him in central midfield should have been ditched there and then. It was a ridiculous gamble to throw him in there on the first game of the tournament, and quite embarrassing for both the manager and the player that the whole thing had to be ditched after less than 2 matches. A front four of Foden, Kane, Saka and Bellingham was too raw and untested to be trialled during the tournament. One of them had to be dropped. You can make the case for whichever one you want. Henderson's performance and minutes had been declining at Liverpool for a while, and Phillips had been sat on the Man City bench for longer still. Why were replacements or different solutions for these profiles not addressed during qualification? Rashford had an off season, and if you no longer fancied him in the team, then that's fine. But why was he not replaced? Instead, the role of England's left wing was just completely changed. I mean, Gordon and Bowen are sitting right there. Both could do a good Rashford impression, maybe even better than the original act, but both barely saw the pitch. Part of me believes that halfway through the tournament, Southgate had actually started to realise it, hence why we got that much criticised quote from him about not having a natural replacement for Calvin Phillips, and other quotes bemoaning fitness levels and an inability to press cohesively. Still, even without inventing a time machine and going back to call up Grealish, Rashford and Jordan Henderson, I feel that England still had enough talent in the squad just to go back to basics a bit. Instead, Southgate seemed to turn Euro 2024 into some weird meta game where he would make his original starting 11 work or so be damned, with Alexander-Arnold as an exception for some reason. There was so much talk from the camp about how Southgate had installed this idea in the players that teams often changed across the tournament, and about how players who didn't start initially would be needed later on. So why were there barely any changes to the starting 11 each game? After 2 matches, everyone could see how fucked the whole thing was. You could arguably see how fucked the whole thing was after England got booed off the pitch in their final warm-up game to Iceland. During the tournament, there was so much noise, so many opinions, and so many crap podcasts discussing how to fix England. After every single England game, at least one player was singled out as the problem that needed fixing. Kane doesn't look fit. Bellingham doesn't look right. Palmer should start over Saka. Foden should be dropped. Rice should be dropped. Wharton deserves a chance over Mainu. Start Trent at right back. Play Saka at left back. Almost every player in the squad got the treatment at some point or another. And in all honesty, it's the players I actually feel quite sorry for here. When 1 or 2 players underperform, you can point at individuals. When the whole squad underperforms, you have to look at the system and the coaching. A lot of these players will come away with their reputations bruised from this tournament, when in reality they were simply all crammed into a style and a system that didn't allow any of them to flourish. Kane especially got more shit than he deserved. Despite being England's all-time record goalscorer and Europe's leading goalscorer last season, many England fans grew frustrated with his game. Despite refuting the allegation every time he was asked, the narrative still persisted that he was simply injured or unfit, and that he dragged England down and should have sacrificed himself and willingly sat himself out. But I don't really buy it. I simply refuse to believe that a striker who bagged 56 goal contributions last season for Bayern is in any way physically finished. Kane has never been mobile. Not now at 30, not when he was 28, not when he was 25. He's never been able to be a pressing machine or to hunt the ball down from opposition defences. It still didn't stop him from becoming the most prolific goal scorer in world football. Is Harry Kane bad now, or was he just consistently asked to do the few things that he's specifically quite bad at? Kane is the England man. He doesn't strop, he doesn't complain, and he fronts all the media stuff. He trots out there every single international window for England, whether it's the Euros or Estonia away. He's come off the back of his best goal-scoring season of his entire career and probably only has 1 or 2 more international tournaments left in him. And what was his reward? Southgate removed all the runners around him to instead cram in as many number 10s as possible who didn't even pass to him. Southgate made him press central defenders, charge down goalkeepers and stay in the box despite not being able to work the ball into him. Then the media dug him out after every game for not having enough touches, and ex-England players consistently called for him to be dropped every chance they could. At one point in the tournament, Foden had passed to Pickford more than Kane. Thanks for everything, Harry. Sorry that everyone hates you now. no hard feelings, mate. The fallout from England's second European final loss in 4 years was relatively accepting. While I am glad it seems that the mainstream media has moved away from relentlessly vilifying the players, calling for heads to roll, and a root and branch review every time England get knocked out of a tournament, I am surprised that there wasn't more of a backlash. I can't help but feel a bit like this was a seriously wasted opportunity for England. Yes, Spain were fantastic, they were the best, and they dominated the tournament like no other national side has, maybe since Spain's previous win in the early 2010s. But the question remains, why were they so much better than us? I'm sorry to say, but on paper, this Spain squad was nothing special. The cold, hard truth is that England got absolutely slapped in the final by a Rodri-less, Gavi-less, Pedri-less Spain. Cucurella is not suddenly Maldini. Robin Lenormand is not one of the greatest centre-backs in world football. No one before the tournament was picking out Mikel Oyarzabal as one to watch. Based on club form, you can make an argument that outside of Rodri, not a single Spain player that started in the final would get in to the England team. Even the likes of Williams and Yamal, who both lit up the tournament, didn't have earth-shattering seasons. Last season, Nico Williams scored the same amount of goals as Marcus Rashford, who didn't even make England's 26-man squad. Lamine Yamal, who is clearly one of the most exciting talents in the world and has a potential ceiling as high as can possibly be, still only scored 7 goals for Barcelona last season. Jared Bowen scored 20 at West Ham, and he can't even get onto the pitch for England. I've seen so much bollocks around working out how this could be, how a team of megastars could underperform so badly, while a team with far less could do far more. I've seen the usual bullshit about how it's the Premier League's fault, the players are too tired, or that there's no culture for English footballers to fall back on. Not like this modern Spain played even remotely similar to the golden era Spain sides of old anyway. I've seen people try and argue that English players aren't actually that good and that sitting deep and playing cautiously is in their DNA or something, but it's all nonsense. Kane scored 44 goals last season. I'll tell you for free now that no English forward will score more than him next season. It wouldn't be crazy to bet on no player of any nationality outscoring him. Foden will smash it at City next year. Palmer will continue his greatness. Saka and Rice will excel at Arsenal. Kyle Walker will not take a throw-in in the opposition's half and lob it 50 yards back to his centre-back. Pickford will not consistently smash 80-yard goal kicks straight into touch. Kane and Bellingham will not ghost through games, hardly touching the ball. Foden will not go 7 games in a row without a single goal contribution. And you know why? Because of one reason and one reason only. They will go back to playing for well-coached teams who have strategies, game plans, and clear patterns of play that suit their player profiles. The simple fact is that one team was coached in a system that made them more of the sum of their parts, that elevated each individual to greater heights than they usually reach, and that perfectly complemented their attributes. And the other was, unfortunately, a bunch of individuals thrown onto the pitch with nowhere near enough time to execute any sense of cohesive game plan and left to figure it all out on the fly. And you know what? Credit to them, because they very nearly did. With all that out of the way now, let's end on a positive note. England played terribly the whole tournament and still managed to make the final and give the best team in the competition a close game. If there is one good takeaway from this, it's that the players that England produces now are so damn good that even when you throw them all onto the pitch in a jumbled, untrained mess, they can still take the team almost all the way. Think about all of the individual flashes of brilliance across this tournament, think about the outrageous goals, and think about those 5 perfect penalties. Now imagine what these players can actually achieve if they're coached into any sort of an even slightly coherent system with some focused ideas. In the past, I think one of England's biggest problems was that although we had some great players, we didn't necessarily have any match deciders, any truly spectacular talents that could pull a rabbit out of a hat and do something special to help the team get over the line when they needed it most. Well, if Euro 2024 has taught us anything, it's that we have these players in abundance now. If anything, it seems like the whole game plan this year was to simply defend and hope that one of our elite forwards could pull a rabbit out of a hat every game. And I'd argue that's basically exactly what happened. England now know that they have a selection of experienced ballers to bail them out when they need it most. I just hope that holding on until Saka, Kane, Bellingham or Palmer bails us out is no longer the plan A. As for the next England manager following Southgate's departure, there's no one correct answer. I haven't spoken much about all the good work Southgate has done with his time in charge of the national team. As said at the start of this video, I'm focusing on Euro 2024 in this one, and I've already covered it in a previous video on this channel. But what must be said is that England definitely need to continue the culture and vibes that Southgate has worked so hard to instill. We cannot go back to the days of old where English players dreaded playing for England and hated playing with each other. Southgate's work in this regard is as impressive as it is invaluable. But the one thing that I want to see more than anything else moving forward from whoever gets the job next is that England define a way of playing and a strategy of winning football matches and then ruthlessly stick to it no matter which other talents emerge. Which, as evidenced by Euro 2024, is an incredibly hard task with the amount of talent England consistently produces now. There is more than one way to skin a cat. If England are going to be a defensive team that sit deep and hit teams on the counter, then that's fine. If England are going to be a front-footed, high-line, man-to-man pressing team, then that works too. If England are going to play slowly and deliberately, then that can work. If England are going to turn every game into a battle of transitions, then that can work too. But whatever the vision may be, the one thing England must do is stick to it. We can no longer get blinded by emerging talents or give in to the allure of dismantling the whole system because we believe it's some heinous crime to leave a good player on the bench. If we are now a relentless pressing side, then just don't pick Harry Kane. If we do pick Kane, then stop playing double wide playmakers and give him a Heung-min Son equivalent to run off him. If we pick Saka, then stop clogging up the middle of the pitch where he likes to cut inside and give him a damn overlap from a fullback once in a while. If we pick Foden, then give him an Erling Haaland archetype to stretch defences for him and allow him the freedom to get as many touches as possible on the right hand side of the penalty area. Importantly, England can't facilitate all of these all at once. England are going to have to start making hard decisions, but it will be worth it if it makes the most out of those who do fit the game plan, and they will reward you with excellent performances that we know they're capable of at club level. Every single successful international side in the past 6 years has figured this out. In 2018, France left out a range of exciting attacking options and opted to play Matuidi left wing and Giroud up front. Giroud started every game for France at the 2018 World Cup and didn't register a single shot on target. However, not a single Frenchman cared once the final whistle blew against Croatia and they partied in the streets. For the longest longest time, Argentina struggled in international tournaments as they tried to cram the likes of Messi, Higuain, Aguero, Di Maria and Carlos Tevez all into one team. It was only when half of them retired and they could focus their game plan around getting the best out of Messi did they find success at the 2022 World Cup. England, much in part thanks to Gareth Southgate and all his work with shaping the youth teams and the production pipelines, now produce elite talent as good as anyone. England are now a team that consistently go deep in major international tournaments. It's time for England to start acting like the elite team that they are. And that means accepting the fact that England are going to have to start leaving some outstanding talent on the bench and even more outstanding talent at home. That means not having a massive inquisition if England aren't getting the best out of a player or demanding that England ditch everything to try fit them all in at the same time. After the game against Serbia, Micah Richards, covering the game for BBC, said that despite winning the game, it was sad that England couldn't get the best out of him. I wonder if there's some Spanish version of Micah Richards out there lamenting the fact that Spain couldn't get the best out of Grimaldo. Maybe he's buried somewhere in here, celebrating as Spain picked up their historic 4th European title. Spain happily benched Grimaldo. France benched the likes of Camavinga and Tchouaméni. Argentina benched Lautaro Martinez and Dybala. Portugal should have benched Ronaldo. Stop worrying about how England can make the most out of their individuals and just focus on how individuals can make the most out of a team. This is the next step for England, the final phase, the final hurdle, the last test before football can finally come home again. All of the elite teams have figured out that it's okay to not always play your best players. It's time for England to start realising it as well. Hey, look, it's not all doom and gloom with England, is it? I mean, it could be worse. We did better than Germany. I mean, I guess they did win the World Cup back in 2014, which wasn't that long ago. But anyway, we did better than Portugal. How rubbish were Portugal, eh? I mean, although they did win the Euros back in 2016, didn't they? But anyway, at least we made it to the final again. And we did better than France, but I guess they did win the World Cup in 2018. But what about Italy? We're way better than Italy now. They were terrible. They've fallen off, haven't they? Although, you know, they did win the Euros back in 2021. I mean, at least we're better than Scotland.